So, today I want to talk about navigating the 3D and 4D world and how you might be dipping back and forth between the two and how to manage that because it's kind of overwhelming and stressful and sometimes very frustrating. So, stay tuned to this episode because I'm going to talk about some real life experiences and give you some insights about how you can manage these dips back into 3D when you're kind of mostly living in the 4D world. Welcome to the Soul Alignment Mentor Podcast. I'm your host, Angie, and I'm inviting you to explore the depths of self-sabotage, limiting mindsets, and the beliefs that hinder our progress in life. Through intuitive messages I receive from my spirit team, I share profound insights to help you live authentically and break free from these limitations. Join me now as we uncover all the keys to living your best life. Welcome back. My name is Angie, and I'm your Soul Alignment Mentor, bringing you intuitive messages to help you align with your most authentic and highest self. So if you're anything like me and you've been on this awakening journey or healing journey or spiritual growth journey for a while, then you have an understanding of what it feels like to be dipping in between the 4D and 5D. And so if you're not 100% sure what I'm talking about, let me explain what I mean by 3D and 4D. So as the consciousness of humanity shifts and awakens, we are actually moving into what we would call a different dimensional thinking. Most of us as humans have been connected with what we call the 3D world. So if you think about maybe the Matrix, or a video game, and how we are living in a reality that we are not aware of that we're living in. So when we're asleep to who we are unconscious that we are the ones creating the things around us. We are unconscious about the manipulation or the darkness or the things that hold us back from connecting with our intuition and our higher selves. We mostly are kind of following system outside of ourselves. Maybe we've been caught up in religion. Maybe we've been taught to think and believe something about ourselves. And then when you start to awaken, your whole reality shifts. You start to see everything around you differently. You start to understand that you've been programmed to think the way you think. You've been conditioned to believe the things you believe, and that not everything you've been told about the world around you or yourself is not necessarily true. And so as you awaken and you're shifting your consciousness, you start to see things differently. You start to look at religion differently. You start to look at relationships differently. You start to look at the world in general, the connections with other people or leadership or the government or whatever it might be. Everything starts to shift in reality. And that's because you are awakening more and more to the connection of your true original self, which is your spirit, your higher self. And your higher self is what connects you to your intuition, which is deep within your solar plexus and into your heart. So when you connect deep into who you are, you connect more and more with your internal being, which is your soul. And that part of you guides and leads you. And so the more you shift into a different consciousness, the more you're able to move into another frequency, which allows you to connect more with 4D energy, which is where most of us are basically spending a lot of our time right now. So if you've gone through an awakening journey, you've probably done a lot of healing. You've probably released a lot of negative things in your life. You've stepped away from things that no longer serve you, relationships, connections, activities, habits, all these things that you maybe once engaged in. And then you've seen those things differently because you understand that you were conditioned in that way to have those things in your life. And then you realize they didn't serve you in a very positive way. Or if they did serve you in a positive way, it was because you were at that level at that time. And so you maybe improved or changed or grown or healed in some kind of way. And so you're connecting more and more with that inner part of you, which is your higher self, your intuition. And as you live in your higher self more and more, you shift into that higher consciousness, which we would call 4D. Now, the earth as a collective, all those are awakened, and those who are coming more and more into this understanding will and are shifting into what we call 5D. However, to get to 5D, we have to go through to 4D, because this is where we really start to see more and more things in our life that need to be shifted or changed or released. And this is where it gets pretty difficult. And the reason this is in my awareness is because I went through something just last night that really showed me where I was in my mind compared to those who were around me. I was at a birthday party with a family member last night. And so, of course, some of my other family was there. And I am the only one awakened in my family. And as you can imagine, that is not an easy role or position to have around an entire family structure and system. And anybody else that has this understands the frustration. And so you understand that you might not be able to share things with them, talk openly, be completely or 100% authentic self, and share all of your weird woo-woo experiences that you might be going through, or how much you're healing, or even what you're healing from that they caused you. Maybe your parents or your siblings or whoever it might be in your family. And so as I'm with my family, they began to talk about things that were not aligned with my belief system and who I was. At one point, I had been aligned with that. At one point, I agreed with that. But I've shifted in my reality. I've shifted in my consciousness, and I no longer agree with those things. I no longer align with them. And so I found myself wanting to argue. I found myself wanting to stick up for my position and share my truth and try to convince them of the reality that they're creating in their own world, and that I was right and they were wrong. However, when I started to notice that flaring up inside of me, I realized this is my ego. My ego is trying to make them conform to me so I feel better. When I work with my clients, one of the things I often talk about is the pufferfish of our ego. If you know anything about a pufferfish, when it gets threatened or it gets upset, the first thing it does is puff up so it can protect itself, keep the prey away, keep the bad fish away, or whoever it might be around. And what it tries to do is puff up and scare them or protect itself. And so I have this analogy that this is what our ego does in situations that we become threatened or triggered in some kind of way. And so my ego puffed up, and I felt it puff up because my breathing changed, my thoughts became flustered and upset, and I felt defensive, and I wanted to stick up for myself and say all kinds of things. But I realized that that was not going to end up in a positive conversation or result at all. And so I had to take a moment and recenter myself, calm my breathing back down, and disconnect myself from that conversation, which was not an easy thing to do. However, I noticed that when I stepped back into my own personal reality, I was able to allow them to be where they are and me to be where I am without changing it, without changing them, or without me compromising and moving into that frustrated place where I was reacting to that. And what ended up happening was we ended up going into a completely different conversation in reality, where we all were getting along and talking about something that was completely neutral, had nothing to do with beliefs or connection with one another, anything like that. It just had to do with something that was fun and uplifting, and the vibration shifted when we were able to engage in that activity together without pulling in the two different reality beliefs. And so what was happening was I was able to compromise a little bit in that setting with their 3D understanding of the world and stay in my 4D energy. Now, I understand that this can be difficult because you don't want your loved ones to be in 3D. You want them to shift into that consciousness that you have. You want to be around people that understand you. And this is why this is a difficult place to be right now within humanity as we're shifting back and forth between the 3 and 4D energy, because we're living in two different timelines. They have a timeline they're living in, and we have a timeline that we're living in the 4D. And so when we see them colliding or connecting in some form, when we have to be at a family event or a holiday or engaged in some activity where we're around people that do not understand us, we have to stay in our high vibration, allow our ego to stay calm, connect with our breath, protect our energy, and then shift to be able to not be impacted by the 3D energy, but stay in a connected vibration within your 4D higher consciousness and observe it from the outside. This gives you the ability to not react and not intertwine with it and not bring that energy back into your life. And this is something that sometimes can take practice to do. But the more aware you are that you're reacting, the more self awareness that you have and self realization that you have about your reaction and why you're reacting to it, the better. So for me, after the interactions and being able to see the difference between how I reacted when I was in my ego and how I reacted when I was able to step back and pull back into my higher consciousness, I was able to actually see the energy shift around me, where I was able to stay in a more positive frequency, understanding that I'm not responsible for any of the people around me shifting into a higher consciousness. I'm only responsible for me. And when I stay in a high vibration, it shows them a different energy that they can engage with. So it's not that I don't want to influence and I don't want to teach and I don't want to help the people around me who are not yet in 3D, but I have to realize that I am not responsible for them doing it. Just like nobody was responsible for my awakening. It happened because I was ready. It was something that my soul had already put in place for me to awaken at a certain time. And so, if it is meant to be for these individuals, they will awaken when it is meant to be. And we don't have to worry about that. We have to stay in our connection with our higher self and continue to maintain our high vibration, or the vibration we have been able to reach at that time, to be able to not react and respond to the 3D world that could really pull up some really deep old wounds and traumas and trigger us. Now, if that is the case, I want to encourage you to pay attention to those and then take those wounds and traumas and memories back with you into your own space and spend time with them. Express how you feel in your own energy. Allow yourself to see what really was causing me to feel the way I felt when I was in that setting and what still needs to be healed. What is that showing me? What is it reflecting inside of me? Because everything really is a reflection of you. And so my trigger, when it came up in those moments where I wanted to stick up for myself or share my truth and I knew that they would not understand, that's an old wound for me. That's something even in childhood when I didn't feel seen or heard or accepted and wanted within the family unit. So that's an old wound that came up for me that I can pull back into my reality here within the 4D in my own space and go deeper into and really work on healing that wound so that when I'm back in that environment again, it's not as easily triggered. So these times give us opportunities to see where else in our mind and ego needs to be healed. And I tell my clients all the time, we are never going to be completely healed. As a human, we will always have something that we're working on. We're always learning and unlearning and relearning. Everything is always an evolution. There are things that I thought were true a year ago that I now do not think are true. There are things that I probably will think in the future that I have no idea I will know at this point. And so we are ever evolving. And when a wound shows up, it's not to hurt us, it's to help us to evolve and grow. And if it's the same wound over and over and over, that just means it's really deep, maybe even from a past life. And you are here to clear it out, release that karmic energy, and step more and more and more into your most authentic and highest self. And the more you trust that you are moving that direction, the easier it gets and the less reactive you become to the 3D. Eventually, in the future, things will continue to separate. The timelines will continue to shift, and we will become less and less and less involved with the 3D world. But at this time, we still are. So we have to be careful about what we're engaging in, how we're engaging it, and if you have to engage in it, understanding that your role is to stay connected with your own higher self and maintain your frequency without allowing that pufferfish ego to become defensive and flare up to protect you by saying something or doing something that you know you will regret later. So I hope that is helpful for you, as I'm sure we are all going through this at some point in our lives, especially if you're watching this at the beginning of October 2024. We're about to go into the holiday season where we're going to spend a lot more time with family. And I want to encourage you, if you feel like your higher self is telling you not to engage in something or go to something, then listen to that. It can be really difficult. The first few years of my awakening, I didn't go to my family's holidays. I didn't go to Christmas. I didn't go to Thanksgiving. Now I feel like I can go into these settings and stay a little bit more connected to my higher self and stable. But in the beginning, I had to take time for myself, and I had to really evaluate the wounds that I was holding so I could be in those settings without going back into that old energy. So I encourage you to set boundaries where they need to be set, but also stay loving and kind to the people around you and to yourself, but most of all, yourself. If this is something that you think you would like help with, I have lots of options to work with me. You can set up an individual healing or session with me or reading, or you can join one of my membership tiers. I have 3 different tiers. The first one starts at $25 a month, or you can work with me one-on-one for 7 weeks to 6 months. I have all kinds of options. So reach out to me, email me, set up a reading, whatever you would like to do. Come join my monthly channeling sessions where I channel live for people, and you can ask my spirit team questions directly. And let's continue to raise in our consciousness so that we can become less and less like a pufferfish. So I wish you all the best day, night, evening, whatever time it is for you. I send you all the universal love. Namaste.